Welcome, everyone. Day 10 of the Democrat government shutdown. We're not in a good mood here in the Capitol. It's a somber day. Today marks the first day federal workers across America will receive a partial paycheck thanks to Democrats' obstruction to the system here. This is the last paycheck that 700,000 federal workers will see until Washington Democrats decide to do their job and reopen the government. Starting next week, American service members, many of whom live paycheck to paycheck, are going to miss a full paycheck. If Democrats don't end this shutdown by Monday, then that October 15th date will pass us by. You've got millions of American families who will now have to figure out how to make their mortgage, how to cover their rent, pay the car note, keep food on the table, because Democrats, Chuck Schumer and his colleagues in the Senate, are here playing games. Republicans have voted over and over to end this madness and reopen the federal government. We did our job. By way of reminder, the House passed a clean, nonpartisan CR 3 weeks ago today to keep the government funded and, by extension, to pay our troops and TSA agents and Border Patrol agents and air traffic controllers and the rest of our federal workforce. We had that vote 3 weeks ago. And since then, Senate Democrats have voted repeatedly to keep the government closed. In the Senate, they have now voted 7 times to block paychecks for 2 million federal civilian workers and 1.3 million active duty military men and women. Now, I want to be very specific so that everybody in America can clearly cut through the obstruction and understand exactly who is to blame for this chaos. In fact, would you bring me that chart just real quick? I just want to point this out. Let's just make clear. This is the votes to pay troops and federal workers, okay? This is the number of times that the vote has been done. September 10th, the GOP in the House voted to pay the troops and pay all these federal workers. The Senate did it on September 19th, September 30th, again on October 1st, and 3rd, and 6th, and the 8th, and the 9th. Every single time the Republicans voted to pay the troops and federal workers, and every single time the Democrats voted not to. That is the record. They'll continue to put this bill on the floor. It'll be on the floor again next week in the Senate. And we'll see how many times they want people to go without paychecks. The Republicans are not playing games here. We sent a very clean, simple CR. You see this. Thank you so much for that. We are doing the job and making sure that the American people are taken care of. But judging by their behavior right now, the Democrats don't appear to be in any rush to end this pain. There's some headlines I brought you this morning. I just want you to hear what's being said about this. CNN headline from yesterday, quote, Democrats say even missed paychecks for U.S. troops won't be enough to end the shutdown alone. For many of them, this is about showing a fight to President Trump. They have to show a fight against Republicans so they can appease who? The far left base of their party. It is shameful. And for what? Chuck Schumer, the architect of this shutdown, is trying to bow to the Marxist wing of his party. You heard him yesterday. He said in his own words, every day of the shutdown, he said, quote, gets better for us. Better for who, Chuck? For the Democrats in the Senate? So you can bow to the Marxist base and not get a challenge? Here's another headline from Politico yesterday. Quote, Chuck Schumer's critics are satisfied. Yeah, the far left base of the party is satisfied. They don't mind the troops go without pay and civilian workers are furloughed. They don't care. Former DNC chair David Hogg, he heaped praise on Chuck Schumer as well. This is what Chuck Schumer was after. This is what he desires. The praise from the far left. David Hogg said, quote, give credit where credit's due. This is a big step up. A big step up. While you're delaying flights, while you're making people go through this pain. The co-founder of the far left group Indivisible said this yesterday publicly, quote, Chuck Schumer hasn't surrendered yet. I call that progress. There's one inescapable fact. It's a glaring fact that everybody in America can see. Chuck Schumer is hurting real Americans for his own political survival. I'm going to say that again. Chuck Schumer is hurting real Americans for his own political survival. If you're a service member who's not getting a paycheck, it's because Chuck Schumer has to appease the Marxist. Cut and simple. It's plain and simple. Shame on you, Chuck. Every Senate Democrat who's going along with this, you lack the moral fortitude to do the right thing. This is the first time in history, the first time in the history of the United States Congress, that a party has shut down the government over a clean CR. We frankly didn't expect this. We sent over a no-frills 24-page document to keep the lights on, keep Congress working, to keep the paychecks flowing, and they stopped it because they're afraid of the far left. I'm just going to walk through a quick sample of the devastating impacts that Americans are feeling as we speak right here, because this is real. And you'll note a theme here. A lot of these are blue states where their Senate Democrats are over here keeping the government closed. In California, home of the nation's largest civilian workforce, more than 250,000 federal workers are now working without pay. Both the Democrat senators, Padilla and Schiff, have now voted 7 times to block those paychecks. In Virginia, there are 189,000 federal employees, nearly 5% of the state's workforce, that are waiting on their next full paycheck. And both of their senators, Warner and Kaine, refused to pass a clean bipartisan CR that Democrats supported 13 times under Joe Biden in the previous 4 years. In Maryland, Maryland is a hub of trade and commerce. You have 150,000 federal workers there. Both of their senators, also Brooks and Van Hollen, have voted 7 times to keep the government closed. In Georgia, home to our nation's busiest airport, there's close to 110,000 federal workers, including thousands of TSA agents and air traffic controllers, now being forced to work without pay. You guessed it. Senators Ossoff and Warnock voted to block those paychecks too. Arizona, 58,000 workers serve the federal government, including many Border Patrol agents who are working hard to keep us safe. That hasn't stopped Arizona Senators Kelly and Gallego from blocking funding 7 times for the paychecks for their own constituents. In fact, they have so much idle time, they're having publicity stunts, posing publicity stunts outside my office. In New York, let's talk about New York because this is interesting. It's the home to both of the Democrat leaders, both in the Senate and the House. 115,000 federal workers are waiting on Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer and Kristen Gillibrand to come to their senses and end this shutdown. Chuck Schumer said himself, with every day of the shutdown gets better for us. And what does that look like? We're talking about 2 million civilian workers, 1.3 million active duty service members, everybody being hurt because of it. Chuck is what they're doing right now. I've been asked many times in interviews over the last couple of days, you seem angry. You don't get angry a lot. I don't, but this is beyond the pale. What Chuck Schumer's doing right now, it's sickening. It's sickening to hear him say it's better for him and his party when it's so terrible for real Americans. Millions of people are experiencing real pain because of these political games. And you'd think after 44 years in Congress, Chuck Schumer would know better. But it seems apparent now that he spent too long in Washington to understand the real pain of real people. We're going to share a few more things with you about this morning and to talk about some of the real-world impacts on federal law enforcement. We've asked our House Committee Chairman, the Chairman of our House Administration Committee, Brian Stile, to come and talk a little bit more about that. So Chairman Stile, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for your leadership. Chuck Schumer yesterday said every day gets better for the Democrats. That's certainly not true for the men and women in blue. Today is the first day that the men and women of law enforcement here in the United States Capitol, U.S. Capitol Police, are not receiving pay that they earned since the beginning of the Chuck Schumer shutdown. As this continues, the chaos and consequences of the Schumer shutdown continue to build. Yet the men and women in law enforcement are asked to go out and serve and protect us every day. Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries will maintain a security detail, men and women that aren't being paid because of Democrats' decision to shut down the federal government. I chair the Committee on House Administration, work closely with the men and women of the United States Capitol Police, and they're suffering the consequences of the Schumer shutdown today. It's particularly concerning at a period of time when political violence is on the rise. Senate Democrats have voted to shut down the federal government 7 times. That's 7 times to defund our police. I'd ask Chuck Schumer if it's getting better for the men and women of Border Patrol who are on the border securing the United States of America. I'd ask him if it's getting better for the United States Marshals who are doing incredibly dangerous work on behalf of our country in every state. I'd ask him if it's getting better for the United States Secret Service, who's protecting the President of the United States. Chuck Schumer has put politics over people. It's getting better for his politics, he thinks. It's not better for the people of the United States of America. We should be standing with the men and women of law enforcement who are doing their job to protect us. And I think it's incredibly unfair and unjust that the men and women of Capitol Police have not received the money that they earned since the start of the Chuck Schumer shutdown. With that, I want to introduce our leader, Steve Scalise.
Well, thank you, Chairman Stahl. And as the Speaker pointed out, too, it's disgraceful that not only are we in this shutdown because Chuck Schumer is only concerned about appeasing the most radical elements of his base, but time and time again, 7 times now, you've had other Senate Democrats join in with him to keep the government closed. And they're feeling some pressure, but what they're trying to do now, both Democrats in the House and Senate, is trying to shift the blame away. While they're voting to shut the government down, they're trying to blame other people. Let's be clear, and the Speaker showed it. We've had actual votes on the House floor to keep the government open. We've had those same votes on the Senate floor. You can see who has been voting to pay our troops, who has been voting to pay our TSA agents, our Border Patrol agents, and who are those people that are voting to shut it down, to deny pay to our troops. It's crystal clear. And you can go see the voice votes, the record votes. Members of Congress, House and Senate, have actually cast votes over and over again on whether they want to keep it open or shut it down. You don't have to wonder about a blame game. Gee whiz, both sides are blaming the other side. Just go look at the votes. There have been actual votes in the House and the Senate, 8 different times now between the 2 chambers to open the government down. And Republicans have said, yes, let's keep the government open while we negotiate our differences. And Democrats continue to say no so they can appease their radical base. And so as Chuck Schumer denies pay to millions of federal workers, we know roughly at least 1 in 3 of every service member in America lives paycheck to paycheck. Now, should they get solace in knowing that they're risking their lives, some of them overseas, while their families are here, and on Monday, when we get to the date where paychecks would be cut, the government will still be shut down, and they won't even be getting a paycheck on the 15th. Rent will still be due, mortgages will still be due, car notes will still be due for those service members risking their life. Should they take solace in knowing that at least it's a good day for Chuck Schumer? At least Chuck Schumer feels like the shutdown's working good for Schumer. That's not going to give solace to any of those families. Instead, it actually increases the anger of the families all across America who are seeing the real cost of this shutdown. They know who's voting to shut the government down, but now they're feeling direct pain. And the only thing they hear from Democrat leaders that keep voting no is, oh, it's a good day for us because the far left is patting us on the back. Do they really need a participation trophy to feel good about themselves while they inflict pain on millions of people? It's disgraceful. And as the Speaker pointed out this morning, one of the other things that's being reported now is that one of the dates it looks like they're holding the government hostage over is the 18th of the month, where they're having this Hate America rally in Washington. And Democrats want to keep the government shut down to show all of those people that are going to come here and express their hatred towards this country that they're fighting President Trump, that they're keeping the government closed as if it's something to be proud of. They ought to be ashamed. If they had any shame, they would come back, they would open up the government, and then we can negotiate our differences, which are very, very large on a lot of these issues. But in the meantime, we all know who's doing this. The votes are crystal clear. The public can go see who's voting to keep the government open, who's voting to shut it down. Chuck Schumer and his Democrat colleagues who are doing this need to look themselves in the mirror and start working for the American people instead of being so concerned about appeasing their far left radical base. With that, our whip, Tom Emmer.
I'm going to go back to Chuck's words again. Quote, every day gets better for us. You reopen the government and we lose our leverage. The point of this shutdown is not just suffering for suffering's sake, but to make a point. These are actual quotes from Chuck Schumer and Senate Democrats over the last week. You don't have to take our word for what their motivations are in shutting down the government. They are spelling it out for you and all of us. This is about one thing and one thing only: to score political points with the terrorist wing of their party, which is set to hold, as Leader Scalise just commented on, a Hate America rally in D.C. next week. And they've forced military families, air traffic controllers, border patrol agents, farmers, veterans, TSA agents, and federal workers to pay the price. We're now on day 10 of the Democrat shutdown. Senate Democrats, including Senator Tina Smith in my home state of Minnesota, have had 7 opportunities to reopen the government, but they've refused every single time. Consequently, Americans across the country are experiencing flight delays. In a matter of mere days, 11,000 Minnesota National Guardsmen won't get paid. Federal workers are being forced to figure out how they're going to put food on the table for their families, just so the Democrats can maintain their leverage to make a point. It's despicable, it's disgusting, and it should be disqualifying. With election season right around the corner, I hope every single American is taking note. Republicans have done our job. Democrats, on the other hand, are only here to play politics, and they're willing to hang their constituents out to dry to do it. And with that, I'll turn it back to our speaker.
Thank you, Whip Emmer. Take a few questions this morning. Yeah, Jack.
I know your position about saying it was on the Senate. They have to take our bill that would reopen the government. But haven't the circumstances changed? And because there's a dire emergency, as Mr. Stile talks about the Capitol Police, you all talked about the military, to say we should do something different here. We're still going to apply our pressure on the Senate, but you know, if you're in the middle of a ball game and the strategy changes, you're behind, or somebody gets hurt or something like that, the coach calls in different play. Why not call in a different play right now?
Well, the ball game analogy doesn't fit here because we weren't playing a game. We sent over a clean CR, and I've explained this many times. If there was some Republican priority or poison pill or gimmick or trick or something that I could pull off the CR in order to negotiate with Democrats, I would have already done it. It's not there. When I say we're operating in good faith, I mean it. We sent over a totally clean measure that they had already voted for before. In fact, that Chuck Schumer gave impassioned speeches as recently as March of this year. The same instrument, the same one that he said was the right thing to do and that it must be done so Americans don't feel harm. He said that earlier this year. So we sent him the same instrument, hoping, of course, believing that they would do what has always been done here and pass a clean CR. And they didn't. So I don't have anything to negotiate. There's nothing more for me to do. I literally don't have a card that I can take off the deck because we did it all in good faith. They're the ones politicizing this. They're trying to play a game. We're not engaging in a game. We're trying to get the government open again so that people can be served, and it's plain and simple. Yes, sir.
To Chad's question, though, hasn't the state of play changed here, though? Isn't it perhaps the responsible thing to do to pass some kind of legislation, to pay troops, to pay federal...
We did that. We passed the bill. We have voted 8 times. Republicans have voted 8 times to pay the troops, to pay the civilian workforce, to pay TSA agents, Border Patrol, air traffic controllers, and all the rest. We've done it. The Democrats have voted no every time. There is no other instrument to do it. It's called a CR to keep the lights on and the doors open so that Congress can do its work, so that, as the Leader Scalise said, so that we can do all the rest of the negotiation and deliberation on all these other issues. Open the government, Democrats. That's what this is. We have voted so many times to pay the troops. We've already done it. We did it in the House 3 weeks ago. The ball is in the court of Senate Democrats right now. That's it. Yes, ma'am.
In terms of strategy, if you could speak to your strategy on keeping the House out in their districts and any idea when they may come back.
This is not a strategy call to keep the House working in their districts right now. There's an urgent necessity of it. We had a conference call yesterday with House Republicans. They're fanned out across the country. They're in their districts trying to help their constituents because so many of them are now struggling because of the Democrats' games. So they're helping, for example, rural hospitals to access the funds that we got signed into law July 4th, $50 billion rural hospital fund, so they can provide for health care for their constituents. They need to know how to navigate that before Chuck Schumer and the Democrats try to take it away. Their counterproposal CR would spend $1.5 trillion and take away the $50 billion that we passed into law just on July 4th, signed into law by President Trump, to prop up rural hospitals. Who cares about health care here? Okay, our members are out working diligently in their districts, serving their constituents right now. We will come back here and get back to legislative session as soon as the Senate Democrats turn the lights back on. That's the fact. That's where we are. Yes, ma'am.
On the military pay, though, in past shutdowns, there have been ways to guarantee that members of the military get paid. There are over 100 Republicans in your caucus who have signed on to a standalone bill to pay these military members. So at what point do you...
Every single Republican is not just talking about paying troops. We have already had those votes. We have done that. We did it 3 weeks ago. The executive branch, the president, is working on ways that he may have as well to ensure that troops are paid. The Republican Party stands for paying the troops. The Democrats are the ones that are demonstrating over and over and over now 8 times that they don't want troops to be paid. This could not be any simpler than it is. Look at the record. Don't listen to what these Democrat politicians are saying up here. Look at how they're voting and demand that they do the right thing. That is where we are, and that's where it'll be. Yes, ma'am.
I actually have a question with Emmer. Mr. Emmer, I know the White House announced last week that they were going to rescind $7.5 billion in green energy funds. They went to a number of states. It includes your district, however. Excel Energy Services is on the line to lose $7 million if this funding is rescinded. What conversations have you had with the White House about this, and what is your expectation for this funding? Is it truly gone, or is there some way to get it back?
Well, this is going to affect the Speaker, this is going to affect the Leader, this is going to affect our Chairman, Representative Stile, and all of our members. Literally, this could end today. If Chuck Schumer and Democrats would reopen the government, this wouldn't be an issue. And what's happened is the White House has to make some very serious and difficult decisions as to what's essential and what's not. If you want to end it, Chuck Schumer, reopen the government.
So, sir, your understanding is the White House will continue with that funding when the government reopens?
I would suggest that you call Tina Smith and ask her why she wants to keep the government shut down and put all this at risk.
Is there a breaking point, like 2 paychecks missed, 3 paychecks, 4 paychecks, where you all change your strategy and say, we're going to bring House Republicans back and negotiate before the government's reopened?
I would like you to ask that identical question to Chuck Schumer. We have done the work in the House. We are awaiting them to do theirs. This is a 2-body, 2-chamber legislative body, okay? The House did its work. The House and Senate Republicans have repeatedly affirmed that. You saw the chart. 8 times now, they have voted to get the government open and get troops paid and federal civilian workers paid. Democrats have dug their heels in and said, no, 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 over and over. They're the ones blocking the checks, not Republicans. All these questions should be directed to them and not to us. That is how this works. Thank you all for being here.